Most Rolex models haven't changed a huge amount in their design over the decades that they've been in production. But the Explorer II is slightly different from that because it's had some major design changes since its inception. It's also had some major movement changes as well. Today, we're going to be exploring the past 30 years of the Rolex Explorer II. In 1971, Rolex launched the first Explorer II with the reference 1655. 50 years later, there's been a lot of changes, but weirdly, I think the current model of the Explorer II has a real heavy nod to the original 1655. We're going to be exploring the past 30 years of the Explorer II, highlighting the differences, the good points and some of the bad points, the things that you need to look out for. We're going to be starting in the late 80s, in 1989, when Rolex launched the 16570. Just like all vintage Rolexes, they have one reference number, the 16570, but there are multiple versions, multiple variants of that watch. A lot of people call these transitional models because sometimes there's a blend between one reference to the other and then some of the specifications are carried over, and this version of the Explorer II is no exception. Early versions of the 16570 has the caliber 3185 movement inside and Tritium Lume. You can tell when a 16570 has the caliber 3185 inside because you just need to change the time and look at the hour hand. It wobbles, it looks unstable, it doesn't move in a particularly nice way. You can also tell when a dial is tritium because down at 6 o'clock it says T less than 25. The half-life of tritium is around 20-25 years, and over this time it can turn a little yellowy, which it can look nice, but the more important thing to note is that it just won't work. The Lume will die pretty much immediately. Later versions of the 16570 had an updated movement. It was powered by the caliber 3186, which addressed that exact issue with the previous movement, the 3185, with the wobbly hour hand. This hour hand now snaps into position and feels so much more stable, so much more solid. There's also a change in Lume as well. If down at 6 o'clock it just says Swiss, it means the watch has Luminova Lume. If it has Swiss made, then it has Super Luminova. In 2011, there was a drastic change to the design of the Explorer II. Rolex launched the 2166570, the 6-digit version of this, and just like with all other sports watches, it had a drastic maxi case, beefy design added to the watch. This is probably the biggest design change for at least the last 30-40 years of the Explorer II. It's no longer a conservative, relatively slim sports watch. It's now an out-and-out beefy watch. It no longer has the kind of versatile look of the previous version. It's without doubt a sports watch, and I don't think it's versatile in the slightest. The maxi case now makes this watch a 42mm watch, whereas previously it was 40mm wide. It's much thicker and the bracelet is completely solid. It no longer has the hollow center links or hollow end links. The whole thing is just solid still, and the clasp is now a milled clasp as opposed to the previous stamped clasp. This thing is rock solid any way that you look at it. You have the option between a gloss white or a gloss black dial with gloss or polished hands. The GMT hand now is a big nod to the original one on the 1655, with it being bright orange and so much larger than previous. The reference 2166570 is powered by the caliber 3187, which is pretty much the same as the 3186. However, because we now have the maxi case, the 42mm wide case, Rolex wanted to make the movement larger. So it's pretty much the same movement, but just put on a larger base plate. It also has updated shock absorbers. This now has a Rolex developed Powerflex shock absorbers, which provides around 50% better shock resistance. 50 years after the launch of the Explorer II, Rolex launches the current version, the 2266570. Before I tell you the difference between this and the previous version of the Explorer II, a big thanks to Chronext for lending me all these watches and allowing me to make this video. I'm a massive fan of the Explorer II, and so this is an absolute treat for me to get hands-on with all of these watches. And if you're unfamiliar with Chronext, they are one of Europe's largest watch dealers. They have over 7,000 watches on their books, and all of them have been inspected by Chronext's in-house watchmakers who verify the authenticity of every single watch, so you know the watch you're buying is 100% authentic. Chronext actually has two brand new Explorer IIs. They've got a white dial and a black dial. These are both the latest versions of the Explorer 2. The white dial goes for more money than the black dial, simply because it's more popular than the black dial. But if you like the design of the Explorer 2, but you're not massively fussed on Rolex, or you want something slightly different, check out Grand Seiko. They have the SBGN003 or the SBGN005. I used to have one of these watches and they are brilliant. Check out Chronex's offering by clicking on the link in the description down below or in the first comment. If you find something that you like that's over £5,000, then use discount code barkandjack, all one word, all in capitals, and you'll save some money. So the difference between the 216570 and the 226570, they're very subtle differences, but ultimately what we have today is just a very refined version of the Explorer 2. The case is more refined, the dimensions are more refined, the dial is, in my eyes, so much better than previous, and the movement is remarkably better. What does this actually mean? The dial now is matte as opposed to gloss, as are the hour markers. So previously we had quite a reflective dial, and now everything is matte. It also means that the dial is really high contrast. We have a very punchy dial, especially now that we have matte hands on top as well, as opposed to previously polished or gloss hands. It sounds like a small change, but when it comes to legibility, this has a massive impact between the two watches. The elements that make the watch feel like a more refined product are mainly around the dimensions of the watch. So we now have a shorter crown with slimmer crown guards. We've got thinner lugs, and they've done that by expanding the size of the bracelet. The bracelet is now 22mm wide, which is brilliant because it means you have easy access to lots of different NATO straps, and this thing looks brilliant on a NATO strap. I feel like the dimensions now of this Explorer 2 are more reminiscent of the proportions from the 40mm Explorer 2, and those proportions were brilliant. However, the biggest change with this watch is probably with the movement. The movement has been taken to a whole new level. The mechanics that have gone inside, it's had a massive update. This version of the watch is powered by the caliber 3285, which has a new Rolex Chronology escapement, which is Rolex's latest innovation. It's 15% more efficient than the previously used Swiss lever escapement. The rotor now uses ball bearings, which again is more efficient, but there is a downside to that. It means that the rotor is more noisy. Just give the watch a little shake, well, you kind of get this dry, scratchy sound, and it's not a particularly nice sound, but if it makes the movement more efficient, then kind of have to take it. The biggest difference, or the kind of difference that brings all of these little tweaks together, is the mainspring. The mainspring in this watch is longer. Rolex have managed to fit a longer mainspring within the barrel by shaving down the edge of the barrel. So the barrel walls are thinner. That kind of makes it a bit more delicate and harder to service, but that's not something for us to worry about, that's for them to worry about. Ultimately, the barrel walls are thinner, which allows the mainspring to be longer. That, along with the more efficient movement, means that the watch has 70 hours of power reserve, which is a massive increase from the previous 48 hours. So it's easy to kind of zoom out and look at the various changes within Rolex and say, oh, they haven't done much, or it's just a dial change, or it's just a color change, and say that nothing much is going on. But sometimes the big changes are what's happening on the inside. And that's most certainly what's happened with this Explorer 2 compared to the previous. It's easy just to look at it and say, oh, this is the same watch. It isn't, because the technical stuff inside has had a massive update. I'm a huge fan of the Explorer 2, and if you follow the channel, you're probably bored of me talking about the Explorer 2 now, because I've done really quite a few videos about it. But I just think it's a brilliant range of watch. That, along with the standard Explorer range as well. I'm obsessed with them. I think they're just brilliant. And although right now, this version, the current version of the Explorer 2 is factually the best, technically the best Explorer 2 that there is, it's simply because of the updated technology. That doesn't mean that any of the previous Explorer 2s are bad watches. At some point, they were the best Explorer 2. There is something nice and nostalgic about the old Explorer 2, the 40mm Explorer 2s. They just have this kind of nearly vintage vibe about them. They look great. It doesn't matter which Explorer 2 you get, you're going to get a kick-ass watch regardless. But hopefully this video helps you make a decision for that, but they're all great. Which era of Explorer 2 is your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you have any other questions about the Explorer 2, then please drop them down there. I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't, I'm sure someone else watching will have the answer. If you like this video, Hit the thumbs up button if you like the style of this video. Hit the subscribe button down and that little bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. Don't forget to check out Chronex. There'll be a link in the description down below and in that first comment. That will take you over to Chronex. And if you find something that you like that is over £5,000, use discount code barkandjack, all one word, all in capitals when you check out, and that will save you some money. What else? Instagram, give me a follow at barkandjack, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.